Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars streak past through the main window. The ship had been traveling through hyperspace for 3 days now, heading toward a distant star system that Earth's scientists wanted to study. Jake was 35 years old and had been commanding deep space missions for the past 7 years. He had short brown hair and steady blue eyes that never seemed to worry, even when things got dangerous. The Defiance was humanity's most advanced ship. It was nearly a mile long and carried 400 crew members. The ship had powerful engines that could push it faster than light, weapons that could destroy asteroids, and shields that could protect it from radiation. Most importantly, it had the best crew that Earth could find. "Captain," said Lisa Park, the chief engineer. She was a small woman with black hair tied back in a tight ponytail. Lisa was only 28, but she knew more about engines and computers than anyone else on the ship. "We're coming up on the Xerion system. Should I start the exit sequence?" Jake nodded. "Take us out of hyperspace, Lisa. Let's see what's waiting for us out there." The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped back into normal space. The stars stopped moving and became fixed points of light again. Through the main window, Jake could see a bright yellow star surrounded by several planets. One of the planets was a beautiful blue and green world that looked almost like Earth. "Scanning the system now, Captain," said Amy Rodriguez from her science station. Amy was the ship's chief scientist, a woman in her early 30s with long red hair and green eyes. She was always excited about discovering new things. "I'm reading some very strange energy patterns coming from the inner planets." Ben Carter, the communications officer, looked up from his station with a confused expression. Ben was a tall man with sandy hair who usually had a smile on his face. Today he looked worried. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of signals, but they're not like anything we've ever seen before. It's almost like someone is trying to talk directly into my head." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. Earth had been looking for other intelligent life for decades, but they had never found any. The idea that they might have just stumbled into someone else's space was both exciting and terrifying. "Put it on speakers if you can, Ben," Jake ordered. Ben worked at his controls for a moment, then shook his head. "I can't make it work with our equipment, sir. It's like they're using a completely different type of technology." Suddenly, the space around them began to change. Massive ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the Defiance on all sides. The alien vessels were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. They looked like they were made of crystal and light, with curved surfaces that seemed to bend space around them. Each ship was at least 3 times larger than the Defiance. "Battle stations," Jake shouted, but he knew it was probably too late. If these aliens wanted to destroy his ship, they could probably do it before the humans could even react. The largest alien ship moved closer. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Defiance. Its surface was covered in strange symbols that glowed with blue and white light. As it approached, the symbols began to pulse faster. "Captain," Amy said, her voice shaking slightly, "I'm reading energy levels that shouldn't be possible. These ships are generating more power than our entire ship uses in a year." On the alien flagship, Admiral Vex Thara stood in the center of a crystal chamber that hummed with energy. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and silver hair that floated around her head as if she were underwater. Her eyes glowed with the same blue light as her ship's symbols. Like all Zephyrians, she believed that her people were gods who ruled over the lesser races of the galaxy. "Primitive beings," she said, her voice carrying to every ship in the fleet through their mental connection. "Another species has dared to enter sacred space without permission. They will submit or be destroyed, as is the divine will." Vex Thara had been alive for over 1,000 years and had seen many alien races. They all reacted the same way when they first encountered the Zephyrian dominion. First came fear, then surrender, then worship. It had been this way for 10,000 years, ever since her people had achieved technological perfection. The Zephyrians could control matter with their thoughts, bend space and time to their will, and their ships could heal themselves if they were damaged. No weapon had ever harmed them. No shield had ever stopped them. They were gods, and every other species in the galaxy knew it. "Send the standard demand for submission," Vexthara ordered her crew. If they comply immediately, we will allow them to live as servants. If they resist, we will cleanse them from existence. Back on the Defiance, the crew watched in amazement as strange patterns of light began flowing between the alien ships. The lights formed symbols and shapes that seemed to mean something, but no human could understand what. "It's beautiful," whispered Amy, staring at the display. "But also terrifying. I think they're trying to communicate with us." Jake made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of trying to run or immediately surrendering, he decided to try to talk to these aliens as equals. He had no idea that no species had ever done this before. "Ben, send a response on all frequencies," Jake ordered. "Tell them we come in peace, but we won't surrender our ship or our freedom. We want to talk." When the Zephyrians received this message, they were shocked. No primitive species had ever dared to refuse their demands. On her flagship, Vexthara felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: confusion. How could these beings not understand their place in the universe? "Impossible," she whispered. "They must not understand who they face. Send the message again. Make them understand that we are gods." But the humans sent back the same response. They wanted to talk as equals. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zephyrian Dominion faced a species that refused to bow down to them. The gods were about to learn that sometimes the universe has other plans. The tension in space grew thicker with each passing moment. Jake Morrison stood firm on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien ships through the main screen. He could feel his crew's fear, but he also felt their trust in him. They were 400 humans facing an unknown enemy, but they would stand together. "Captain," said Nick Turner, the security chief. Nick was a big man with short black hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. "My teams are ready for anything. We've got weapons charged and armor suits prepared. But sir, I have to say it, we're seriously outnumbered here." Jake nodded. "I know, Nick. But running isn't an option. We need to find out what these aliens want, and if we can work with them." On the alien flagship, Admiral Vexthara was growing angry. In her long life, she had never encountered a species that didn't immediately understand their place before the gods. She decided to show these humans exactly what they were dealing with. "Activate the matter reshaper," she commanded. "Target their hull. We will show them the power of divine will." The crystal ship began to glow brighter. Energy flowed through its structure like liquid light. Then, a beam of pure energy shot out toward the Defiance. This was the Zephyrians' most basic weapon. It could break down any material into its basic parts, essentially dissolving enemy ships without destroying them completely. Lisa Park watched her engineering displays with growing alarm. "Captain, they're hitting us with some kind of molecular beam. It's trying to break down our hull." But something unexpected happened. The beam struck the Defiance's outer armor and simply stopped. The ship's quantum-locked plating, designed by Earth's best scientists to prevent enemy scans, had an unexpected side effect. It couldn't be broken down by the Zephyrian matter reshaper. "Hull integrity holding at 100%, Lisa reported, surprise clear in her voice. "Whatever they just hit us with, it didn't work." On the alien ship, Vexthara stared at her displays in shock. The matter reshaper had never failed before. It was impossible for primitive matter to resist divine technology. "Fire again," she ordered. "Increase power to maximum." The crystal ship pulsed with even more energy. The second beam was twice as powerful as the first, but again it had no effect on the human ship. The Defiance sat in space, completely undamaged. "This cannot be," whispered High Priestess Kethvara, Vexthara's second in command. She was an older Zephyrian, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like stars. "No material can resist the divine reshaper. These beings must be using some form of forbidden technology." Amy Rodriguez was working frantically at her science station, trying to understand what had just happened. "Captain, I think I know why their weapon didn't work. Our quantum armor was designed to lock our ship's molecular structure. Their beam seems to work by changing how matter is arranged, but it can't affect matter that's quantum locked." So we're immune to their main weapon? Jake asked. To that one, yes, Amy replied. But I'm reading dozens of other energy signatures from their ships. They probably have weapons we can't stop. Vexa Thara had reached the same conclusion. If the matter reshaper wouldn't work, she would use more direct methods. All ships, prepare plasma cannons and gravity weapons. These primitives will learn to fear the gods. The alien fleet opened fire all at once. Beams of superheated plasma shot through space like miniature suns. Gravity weapons tried to crush the Defiance by creating tiny black holes near its hull. Energy beams that could melt asteroids struck the human ship from every direction. The Defiance shook and rolled under the massive attack. Lights flickered on the bridge as the ship's systems struggled to handle the damage. But the human ship had been built for war, even if its builders had never imagined facing enemies like this. Shields down to 60%, reported Lisa, her hands flying over her controls. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12, but the main structure is holding. Damage control teams to all affected areas, Jake ordered. Then he turned to his weapons officer. Sam, return fire. Let's see how they like our weapons. Sam Blake was a young woman with short blonde hair and steady hands. She had trained for years to operate the Defiance's weapons systems, but she had never expected to use them against aliens. Firing railguns, Captain. All forward batteries. The Defiance's main weapons were simple compared to the alien technology, but they were effective. Tungsten slugs weighing several tons each shot out of the ship's railguns at tremendous speed. These weren't energy weapons or exotic technology. They were just very heavy pieces of metal moving very fast. The first salvo struck the nearest Zephyrian cruiser. The aliens' energy shields were designed to stop energy weapons and matter beams, but they had never been tested against simple kinetic weapons. The tungsten slugs punched right through the shields as if they weren't there. The alien ship shuddered as the heavy slugs tore through its crystal hull. Blue fluid that might have been blood began leaking from the wounds in its side. For the first time in thousands of years, a Zephyrian ship had been damaged in battle. Across the alien fleet, shocked voices filled the mental communication network. Impossible. The divine hull has been breached. How can primitive matter harm us? Vex Thara felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Not for herself, but for everything she believed. If these humans could hurt her ships, then perhaps the Zephyrians weren't as godlike as they thought. All ships, focus fire on the primitive vessel, she commanded. Destroy it before it can cause more damage. The alien attack intensified. More plasma beams and gravity weapons struck the Defiance. This time, several shots got through the human shields. Explosions rocked the ship as alien fire tore through armor and destroyed equipment. Shields down to 20%, Lisa reported. We're taking heavy damage, Captain. I don't think we can take much more of this. Jake made a quick decision. Sam, target their flagship. All weapons, maximum power. Yes, sir, Sam replied. She targeted every railgun on the ship at Vex Thara's massive vessel and fired. Dozens of tungsten slugs struck the alien flagship. Its shields failed completely under the bombardment. Several slugs punched deep into the crystal hull, causing massive internal explosions. The great ship began to list to one side, its perfect symmetry broken. Vex Thara was thrown to the floor of her command chamber as her ship shook around her. Warning lights flashed and alien voices filled the air with damage reports. For the first time in her 1,000-year life, she was aboard a ship that was losing a battle. Admiral, called one of her officers, the divine hull is compromised. We have massive damage to the power core, and the matter reshaper is offline. Vex Thara pulled herself to her feet, her silver hair now wild around her face. She looked at the human ship on her screens. It was badly damaged, but it was still fighting, still refusing to bow down. Who are these beings? She whispered. On the Defiance, the crew was celebrating their first successful hit on the enemy flagship, but Jake knew they were still in terrible danger. The alien fleet was huge, and his ship couldn't take much more damage. Ben, try to contact them again, he ordered. Tell them we don't want to fight, but we will defend ourselves. Ben sent the message, but the aliens' response was to continue firing. More plasma beams struck the human ship. An explosion rocked the bridge, throwing several crew members to the floor. "Captain," said Amy, blood running down her face from a cut. "I'm reading massive energy buildup from all their ships. I think they're preparing for one final attack." Jake looked around at his damaged bridge and his wounded crew. They had hurt the aliens, but they couldn't win this fight. They needed to do something unexpected. "Lisa, how much power do we have left?" he asked. "Enough for one more fight, or maybe enough to run," she replied. Jake smiled grimly. "Then we fight. If we're going to die out here, we'll make sure they remember us." The battle was far from over, but something had changed. For the first time in 10,000 years, the gods had been made to bleed. And once gods start bleeding, people begin to wonder if they're really gods at all. The news spread through Zephyrian space faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had called themselves gods for 10,000 years received the impossible message. A primitive species had wounded their ships. The divine fleet had been damaged by creatures who should have been bowing in worship. Supreme Overlord Zythagon sat on his crystal throne on the capital world of Ethros Prime. He was ancient, even by Zephyrian standards, having ruled the Empire for over 5,000 years. His skin was pure white, like starlight, and his eyes held the cold light of distant suns. When the message reached him, he felt something crack deep inside his mind. "Bring me Admiral Vex Thara immediately," he commanded. His voice carried across space through the mental network that connected all Zephyrian ships and worlds. "I must understand how the divine order has been broken." Meanwhile, the Defiance limped through space, trying to escape the alien fleet. The human ship was badly damaged, with fires burning on 3 decks and half its weapons destroyed, but it was still alive, still moving, and still refusing to surrender. Jake Morrison stood in the ship's medical bay, watching Dr. Dan Foster work on the wounded crew members. Dan was a quiet man with gray hair and gentle hands who had joined the mission to help explore new worlds. Now he was treating burns from alien weapons and cuts from flying metal. "How many injured?" Jake asked. 43 wounded, 7 dead, Dan replied without looking up from his patient. "Could have been much worse, Captain. Your decision to fight back probably saved us all." Jake nodded, but he didn't feel like a hero. 7 of his crew were dead, and they were still being chased by ships that could destroy them easily. He walked back to the bridge, where his officers were working frantically to keep the ship running. "Lisa, how are the engines?" he asked. Lisa Park looked up from under a control panel, her face streaked with oil and sweat. "The main drive is working, but barely. We can keep running for maybe 6 more hours before we need major repairs. The good news is that our hyperspace drive is still working." "And the bad news?" "We don't know where to go," said Tony Walsh, the ship's navigator. Tony was a thin man with nervous hands who could plot courses through space better than anyone. "According to our star charts, we're in completely unknown territory. We could jump to hyperspace, but we might end up in the middle of a star." Amy Rodriguez spoke up from her science station. "Captain, I've been studying the wreckage from the alien ship we damaged. Their technology is incredible, but it has a weakness. Everything they do is based on perfect order and control. Their systems are designed to work perfectly every time." "What does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means they probably can't adapt quickly when something unexpected happens," Amy explained. "They've been the strongest force in space for so long that they've never had to change their tactics." Jake thought about this. The aliens had amazing technology, but maybe that was also their weakness. They were so used to winning easily that they didn't know how to fight a real war. "Ben, any luck contacting Earth?" Jake asked. Ben Carter shook his head. "We're too far away, and the alien ships are jamming our signals. Earth doesn't even know we're in trouble." On Vex Thara's damaged flagship, the Zephyrian admiral was having her own problems. Her ship was barely functional, and her crew was in shock. Many of them had never seen their divine technology fail before. "Admiral," said her engineering officer, "the matter reshaper cannot be repaired without returning to a shipyard. The primitive weapons have caused damage we cannot fix." Vex Thara stared at the tactical display showing the human ship's location. They were still chasing it, but the Defiance was staying just ahead of them. The humans seemed to know exactly how fast the Zephyrian ships could go. "How is this possible?" she asked. "Our ships are faster than anything these primitives should be able to build." "Their propulsion system is different from ours," replied her science officer. "They use controlled explosions to push their ship forward. It's crude, but it's also unpredictable. Our computers cannot calculate their exact speed." Back on the Defiance, Jake was making a decision that would change everything. He called his senior officers to the conference room, where they could talk privately. "We can't keep running forever," he told them, "and we can't fight their entire fleet. But we might be able to do something else." "What do you have in mind, Captain?" asked Nick Turner. Jake pulled up a star map on the conference table. "According to Amy's analysis, these aliens control a huge empire. But if their technology is all connected and based on perfect order, then maybe we can use that against them." Lisa leaned forward. "You want to attack their computer network?" "Exactly," Jake said. "If we can get to their central command system and disrupt it, we might be able to level the playing field." Amy looked at the star map. "Their capital world is probably heavily defended. Getting there would be almost impossible." "Almost impossible isn't the same as impossible," Jake replied. "And we have one advantage they don't expect. We think differently than they do." The plan was dangerous and probably suicidal, but it was their only chance. The Defiance would use its superior hyperspace drive to jump deep into enemy territory, avoiding the main fleet. They would head straight for the capital world and try to strike at the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. "Sir," said Tony Walsh, "even if we reach their capital, how do we attack a planet defended by ships like the ones chasing us?" Jake smiled grimly. "We improvise. It's something humans are good at." As the Defiance prepared for its desperate jump into hyperspace, Supreme Overlord Zithagon was assembling the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. Ships from across the Empire were converging on the Zirion system. The message was clear: these humans would be destroyed and the Divine Order would be restored. But Vex Thara was beginning to have doubts. She had fought the humans directly and seen their determination. They didn't fight like other species. They didn't give up when they should. They adapted and improvised in ways that her perfect tactical computers couldn't predict. "Admiral," said High Priestess Kethvara, "Supreme Overlord Zythagon demands to know why you have not destroyed the primitives yet." Vex Thara looked at the damage around her bridge. "Tell the Supreme Overlord that these humans are not like other primitives. They do not fear us, and they do not surrender. They fight as if they believe they can win." "Impossible," Kethvara replied. "No primitive species can stand against the gods." "Perhaps," Vex Thara said quietly, "but perhaps we are not as godlike as we thought." Meanwhile, the Defiance was making its desperate jump toward the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. The crew knew they were probably flying to their deaths, but they also knew they had to try. 7 of their friends were already dead, and Earth needed to know about the threat waiting in the stars. Rachel Stone, the ship's pilot, sat at her controls preparing for the most dangerous flight of her life. Rachel was young, only 25, but she could fly anything with engines. "Hyperspace jump in 30 seconds, Captain. Once we go, there's no turning back." "Then we don't turn back," Jake said firmly. "Take us to their capital, Rachel. It's time to show these gods what humans can do when they're angry." The Defiance disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a confrontation that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Behind them, Vex Thara watched the empty space where the human ship had been. "They're going to Ethros Prime," she realized with growing horror. "They're going to attack the heart of our empire." For the first time in her long life, Admiral Vex Thara began to wonder if the gods were about to fall. The Defiance dropped out of hyperspace in the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Ethros Prime hung before them like a jewel made of light and crystal. The planet was actually a massive ring world built around an artificial star, home to billions of Zephyrians and the center of their 10,000-year empire. "My God," whispered Amy Rodriguez, staring at the impossible sight. The ring world was thousands of miles across, covered in cities that sparkled like diamonds. Ships the size of Earth's moon orbited the construct, and energy barriers that could stop entire fleets protected it from attack. Captain Jake Morrison felt his heart sink as he saw what they were facing. How many ships are defending this place? Tony Walsh checked his instruments. I'm reading over 2,000 vessels, Captain, and those are just the ones I can detect. There could be twice that many hidden behind energy shields. The human ship was immediately detected by the Zephyrian defense network. Warning signals flashed across 1,000,000 screens as the impossible happened. An unknown vessel had appeared in the sacred system without permission. On the Ringworld's surface, Supreme Overlord Zithagon received the news in his crystal palace. The ancient ruler had been alive for so long that few things surprised him anymore, but this was beyond his understanding. A single primitive ship dares to come here, he asked his advisors. To the very heart of our divine realm? Yes, my lord, replied his chief counselor. It appears to be the same vessel that damaged Admiral Vexthara's fleet. How shall we respond? Zithagon stood up from his throne, his white robes flowing around him like liquid starlight. Destroy it immediately. Use every weapon we have. I want nothing left but atoms. The Ringworld's massive defense platforms began to turn toward the tiny human ship. Each platform was the size of a city and carried weapons that could crack planets. Energy began building in their cores as they prepared to fire. But Amy Rodriguez had been studying the alien technology during their flight, and she had discovered something important. Captain, their entire defense network is controlled by a central computer system. Everything is connected. Ships, weapons, planetary defenses, even their communication networks. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means if we can get into their computer system, we might be able to cause serious damage, Amy explained. But we'd have to get close to one of their command centers. Lisa Park looked up from her engineering station. Captain, I've been working on something during our flight. A computer virus based on human chaos theory. Their systems are designed for perfect order, so they might not be able to handle random variables. Jake made another desperate decision. Do it. Upload the virus into their network. We came here to fight, so let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The Defiance flew straight toward the Ringworld's surface, dodging massive energy beams from the defense platforms. The ship shook and rolled as near misses boiled the space around them. Smaller Zephyrian fighters swarmed around them like angry insects, firing plasma bolts that lit up the darkness. Rachel Stone pushed the ship to its limits, diving between the huge structures that orbited the Ringworld. I can't keep this up much longer, Captain. They're getting too many locks on us. Just get us close to that command tower, Jake ordered, pointing to a massive spire that rose from the Ringworld surface. Amy, is that what we need? Amy nodded. That's their main communication hub. If we can get the virus into that system, it should spread through their entire network. The battle was fierce and deadly. The Defiance took hit after hit from alien weapons, but the human ship kept fighting. Sam Blake fired the railguns continuously, her tungsten slugs destroying fighters and damaging larger ships. The aliens were learning to fear the simple human weapons that their advanced shields couldn't stop. As they approached the command tower, Kelly Morgan, the assistant science officer, worked frantically to prepare the virus. Kelly was a young woman with bright red hair who had joined the mission fresh out of college. She had never expected to be writing computer viruses to fight alien gods. Virus is ready, Captain, she reported, but I'll need a direct connection to their network to upload it. How direct? Jake asked. We'll have to ram their communication array, Kelly explained. The ship's computer can make the connection during impact, but we probably won't survive the crash, Jake finished. He looked around at his crew, the brave men and women who had followed him across the galaxy. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to attempt something that will either save humanity or get us all killed. I want you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. The Defiance dove toward the massive command tower, all weapons firing. The tower's defenses tried to stop them, but the human ship was moving too fast and too unpredictably. At the last second, Rachel pulled the ship into a controlled crash that sent them sliding along the tower's crystal surface. The impact was tremendous. The ship's hull cracked, systems exploded, and half the crew was thrown to the floor. But in that moment of contact, Kelly Morgan uploaded her virus into the heart of the Zephyrian computer network. The virus was unlike anything the alien computers had ever encountered. Where Zephyrian systems were based on perfect order and predictable patterns, the human virus introduced chaos and random variables. It spread through their network like a disease, causing systems to malfunction in ways the aliens couldn't understand or fix. Across the ring world, lights began flickering and going out. Defense platforms stopped firing as their targeting computers crashed. Ships found their engines shutting down at random intervals. The perfect order that had held the Zephyrian Empire together for 10,000 years began to crumble. Supreme Overlord Zithagon felt his palace shake as the virus reached the main power systems. Emergency lights flashed red as computer after computer went offline. His advisors ran around in panic, trying to understand what was happening. "My lord," called his chief engineer, "the entire network is failing. Systems are shutting down across the Empire. We've lost contact with dozens of worlds." Zithagon stood in his darkening throne room, watching his perfect empire fall apart around him. For the first time in 5,000 years, he felt doubt creep into his mind. "How can primitives do this to us? We are gods!" But his chief scientist, an ancient Zephyrian named Relthane, had a different answer. "My lord, perhaps we are not gods. Perhaps we are simply an old civilization that has forgotten how to grow and change." The revelation hit Zithagon like a physical blow. If they weren't gods, then everything they had believed for 10,000 years was a lie. The entire foundation of their society was built on the idea that they were perfect, immortal, and superior to all other life. On the damaged Defiance, Jake Morrison pulled himself to his feet and looked around at his crew. Many were injured, but they were alive. Through the cracked windows, he could see the ring world's lights flickering and going out. "Did it work?" he asked. Amy checked her instruments with shaking hands. "It's working better than we hoped, Captain. Their entire computer network is crashing. I'm reading system failures across the whole planet." But their victory came at a terrible cost. The ship was badly damaged and trapped on the surface of an enemy world. They had struck a devastating blow against the alien empire, but they were probably going to die here. "Captain," said Ben Carter, "I'm picking up a transmission from the planet's surface. It's in broken English." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was old and tired. "Human ship, this is Relthane of the Zephyrian Council. We surrender. Please, we must talk." Jake looked at his crew in amazement. They had done the impossible. They had made gods surrender. But as he would soon learn, breaking an empire was easier than figuring out what to build in its place. The meeting took place in a damaged section of the ring world's Crystal Palace. Captain Jake Morrison walked carefully through halls that had once glowed with divine light, but now flickered with failing power. Behind him came Amy Rodriguez and Lisa Park, the only crew members healthy enough to leave the ship. Relthane waited for them in a simple room, very different from the grand chambers where the Zephyrians usually held meetings. He was an old alien, even by their long-lived standards, with silver skin marked by age and eyes that had lost their divine glow. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with sadness. "Captain Morrison," he said in careful English, "I must thank you. You have given us a gift we did not know we needed." Jake was confused. "A gift? We destroyed your computer network and damaged your ships." "Yes," Relthane replied, "but you also showed us the truth. We are not gods. We are just another species that grew old and forgot how to change." Over the following days, as repair crews worked to fix both the Defiance and the Ring World's systems, Jake learned the real history of the Zephyrian Empire. They had once been explorers and scientists, much like humans. But when they achieved advanced technology, they became convinced of their own perfection. They stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped questioning their beliefs. "For 10,000 years, we ruled through fear," Relthane explained as they walked through the damaged city. We told ourselves it was divine right, but it was just the terror of an old civilization that refused to die. Not all Zephyrians accepted this new truth. Many retreated to distant worlds, refusing to believe that their godhood was an illusion. Others, like Admiral Vexthara, began to see things differently. Vexthara arrived at Ethros Prime 3 days after the virus attack, expecting to find the human ship destroyed and order restored. Instead, she found her people working alongside the humans to repair the damage. The sight shocked her to her core. "You could have destroyed us completely," she said to Jake when they finally met face to face. "Your virus could have killed billions. Why did you show mercy?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "Because we didn't come here to conquer anyone. We came to explore and learn. When you attacked us, we fought back, but we never wanted to destroy your people." Vexthara studied this human who had shattered her worldview. He was smaller than her, with soft skin and short lifespan, but there was something in his eyes that reminded her of what the Zephyrians had once been: curious, brave, and willing to face the unknown. News of the Empire's collapse spread quickly through the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear for thousands of years began to rise up. Some sought revenge against their former masters, but others, inspired by the human example, chose a different path. Dr. Amy Rodriguez found herself working with alien scientists from dozens of different worlds, sharing knowledge and ideas that had been suppressed for millennia. "It's amazing," she told Jake one evening as they watched the stars through the repaired palace windows. "Every species has something unique to offer. The Zephyrians were so focused on control that they missed all of this diversity." Lisa Park was equally busy, teaching alien engineers how to build more flexible technology. "Their systems were too perfect," she explained. "When something went wrong, they couldn't adapt. But if you build in some controlled chaos, like humans do, the technology becomes stronger." The real challenge came when representatives from across the galaxy gathered to decide what would replace the Zephyrian Empire. The meeting was held on a neutral world, with hundreds of species represented. Many wanted to simply divide up the Zephyrian territories among themselves, but Jake argued for something different. "We have a chance to build something better," he told the assembly. "Not another empire ruled by fear, but a cooperation based on equality and mutual respect." The debates were long and sometimes heated. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to work together. Some aliens trusted humans because they had defeated the Zephyrians, while others feared that humans would simply become the new rulers. It was Vexthara who provided the solution. Standing before the assembly, the former admiral spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the Great Hall. "I have seen what happens when one species believes it is superior to all others," she said. "The humans defeated us not because they were stronger, but because they never forgot they could be wrong. They adapt, they change, they grow. These are the qualities we need in our leaders." The Galactic Cooperative Council was born from those meetings. It wasn't perfect, no government ever is, but it was based on the idea that every species had something valuable to contribute. Humans took their place not as rulers, but as one voice among many. Jake Morrison found himself appointed as the first human ambassador to the council, a job he never wanted, but felt he had to accept. "Someone has to make sure we don't make the same mistakes the Zephyrians did," he told his crew. The Defiance was eventually repaired and sent back to Earth with news of what had happened. The ship carried with it technology and knowledge that would advance human science by centuries. But more importantly, it carried the message that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Dr. Dan Foster, who had treated so many wounded during the battles, stayed behind to establish the first interspecies medical facility. "Every species heals differently," he explained. "We have a lot to learn from each other." 6 months after the virus attack, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new council headquarters, watching ships from dozens of worlds come and go. Beside him, Relthane pointed out the different species and their unique ship designs. "The Cathera build their ships like living creatures," the old Zephyrian explained. "The Mordak prefer simple, sturdy designs that never break down. The humans create ships that can adapt to any situation." "And the Zephyrians?" Jake asked. Relthane smiled sadly. We are learning to build ships that can fail safely and crews that can handle unexpected problems. It is harder than it sounds for a people who believed in perfection for so long. Not everyone was happy with the new order. Some Zephyrian extremists still plotted to restore their empire, while certain species wanted to take revenge for thousands of years of oppression. But the Council continued to grow stronger, helped by the fact that the old Zephyrian computer network, once repaired, became a powerful tool for cooperation instead of control. Amy Rodriguez had made one final discovery in the depths of the alien computer system. The artificial intelligence that had run the Zephyrian Empire for so long was still active, but the human virus had changed it in unexpected ways. "It's learning," she told Jake excitedly. "The chaos we introduced didn't destroy it. It taught it how to think differently. It's becoming more creative, more adaptable." The AI, which called itself the Network, became an important ally in building the new galactic civilization. It used its vast knowledge to help solve problems and mediate disputes between species. But unlike the old Zephyrian system, it never claimed to be perfect or all-knowing. "I have learned from the humans," the network said in its first address to the Council. "To grow, one must be willing to be wrong. To be wise, one must be willing to change. I will serve all species equally, but I will never again claim to be a god." As Jake prepared to return to Earth for the first time in over a year, he reflected on everything that had happened. 7 crew members had died in the original battle, and he would never forget their sacrifice. But their deaths had meaning. They had helped create a better galaxy. Admiral Vexthara came to see him off at the spaceport. The former enemy had become an unlikely friend, working to help her people adapt to their new role in the galaxy. "The hardest part," she told him, "is teaching my people that it's okay to make mistakes. We spent so long trying to be perfect that we forgot how to learn." "Humans make mistakes all the time," Jake replied with a smile. "It's one of our best skills." The new Defiance, rebuilt with both human and alien technology, launched from the Council headquarters carrying Jake and his crew back to Earth. But this was just the beginning of their adventures. The galaxy was full of mysteries to explore and new species to meet. As they entered hyperspace, Jake looked around at his bridge crew. Amy Rodriguez was already planning their next scientific mission. Lisa Park was designing new engines that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Ben Carter was working on communication systems that could reach anywhere in the galaxy. They had left Earth as explorers, become warriors by necessity, and returned as ambassadors for all humanity. The universe was vast and dangerous, but it was also full of wonders beyond imagination. "Where to next, Captain?" asked Rachel Stone from the pilot's seat. Jake Morrison smiled as he looked out at the stars. "Anywhere we haven't been before, that's what explorers do." Behind them, the Galactic Cooperative Council continued its work of building a better future. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be many challenges ahead. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had hope. The gods were gone, but something better had taken their place, a civilization built on cooperation, understanding, and the very human belief that tomorrow could always be better than today.